Esthal stood before Kael'tar in the Velkrin commander's war room. The military leader was imposing, with ceremonial armor that marked him as a warrior of high status. His forearms were crossed, his expression showing nothing but contempt. "You betray your species by supporting the humans," Kael'tar said coldly. "I support truth," Vestal replied calmly. "I've seen the evidence. I've studied the genetic data. Humans created us, Kael'tar. That's not opinion. That's fact. And that makes them dangerous. They could enslave us all. Or we could accept that we're family. All of us, 47 species, one origin. The Devourers don't care about our politics. They'll destroy us all equally." Kael'tar turned away, looking at star maps showing fleet positions. "You've been deceived. There are no Devourers. This is human manipulation." Vestal pulled out a data pad and set it on the table. "This is from the Exodus fleet. 300,000 ships of humans who have been fighting the Devourers for 3 million years. Real battles. Real casualties. Real evidence. Look at it." For the first time, Kael'tar hesitated. He picked up the datapad and began reading. Minutes passed in silence. Slowly, his expression changed from certainty to doubt. "This could still be fabricated," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Come to Prime Repository. See for yourself. Meet the ancient humans who designed our species. Learn the truth directly." Kael'tar was silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "If I'm wrong, if I attack Earth and the Devourers are real, I doom my people and everyone else. But if you're wrong, if this is a trick, humanity will rule the galaxy." "Yes," Vestal agreed. "You have to decide which risk is worth taking. I've made my choice." While Vestal negotiated, preparations continued across the galaxy. On Earth, training facilities had been established in 12 locations. Humans with high activation markers were being taught techniques that their ancestors had known. Soman oversaw the program, working with Nari and the other awakened ancients. One young trainee named Minseo was showing remarkable progress. She could now navigate ships using intuition rather than instruments, feeling the currents of space-time. Another, Boram, had developed the ability to resist psychological attacks, her mind somehow filtering out the despair that the Devourers projected. "How are they doing this?" Nari wondered. "We needed decades of training to achieve similar results. They're doing it in weeks. 3 million years of evolution," Soman explained. "Their brains are wired differently. They're rediscovering abilities that are already built into them genetically. They just needed permission to use them." At the Prime Repository, the technology transfer was accelerating. Modern ships were being retrofitted with ancient weapon systems. The theory was complex, but Junho had simplified it for the military officers. "These weapons don't destroy matter," he explained to Admiral Sujin. "They destroy the bonds between matter. At the quantum level, everything is held together by forces. Disrupt those forces, and even the strongest armor becomes dust." "How do we target them?" Sujin asked. "That's where your people excel. Ancient humanity used computers for targeting. Slow, even with quantum processing. But your pilots can do it intuitively. They feel where to shoot." The Exodus fleet had arrived and integrated with the Galactic Defense Forces. Captain Hyan met with Daehyun, comparing notes on tactics. Hyun's people had 3 million years of combat experience, but they fought defensively, always running. Daehyun's forces were smaller and less experienced, but they had something else. "Your people aren't afraid," Hyun observed. "My warriors have been fighting the Devourers for so long that fear is second nature." "But yours?" "They're actually excited for the battle. They don't know what's coming," Daehyun admitted. "Maybe that's an advantage. Fear can paralyze. Your people's ignorance might actually help them fight better." 2 weeks before the projected arrival of the Devourers, Kael'tar made his decision. His fleet jumped into the Prime Repository system, and for a moment everyone prepared for battle. Then Kael'tar's ship transmitted a message. "We're here to see the truth." Vestal personally guided Kael'tar through the archives, showing him everything: the ancient records, the genetic data, the consciousness of Nari explaining how and why the Velkrin were created. Hours passed. When Kael'tar emerged from the archives, he looked like a different person. "I was wrong," he said simply. "My people will join the defense." With Kael'tar's forces added, the Galactic fleet numbered over 2 million ships. It wasn't enough, not compared to what the Devourers would bring, but it was a chance. A small one, but a chance nonetheless. The Devourers arrived exactly when predicted. They came in a wave that filled sensor screens, hundreds of thousands of massive biomechanical entities, each one capable of destroying a planet. They moved with perfect coordination, a hive mind thinking as one. Admiral Sujin stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking at the impossible odds. Next to her, Junho reviewed final tactical positions. The plan was simple in concept but insanely difficult in execution. They couldn't win by matching force. They had to be unpredictable. The battle began. Traditional tactics would have the defenders form defensive lines protecting key positions. Instead, Sujin ordered scattered formations, ships appearing to flee in panic. The Devourers pursued, moving to crush the fleeing forces. Then the scattered ships turned and attacked from unexpected angles. Not where the Devourers predicted, but where intuition suggested. Minseo, flying her fighter, didn't aim at the Devourer's armor. She aimed at empty space, trusting her instincts. Her shot arrived exactly where the Devourer moved its vulnerable section a split second later. The Devourers had never faced opponents who didn't follow logical patterns. They tried to adjust, but every adjustment was countered by something that made no mathematical sense but worked anyway. Ships made suicide runs that somehow survived because the pilots trusted feelings over calculations. Entire squadrons would hold position when retreat was logical, creating openings that shouldn't exist. It was chaos, but chaos that worked. The Devourer's psychological attack came next. Wave of despair, of inevitable defeat, of the futility of resistance. Across the fleet, some species faltered. But then something unexpected happened. Borum and the others trained in psychological resistance activated their abilities, but they didn't just resist the despair. They transformed it. They broadcast something else across the quantum. Networks that connected all galactic species, pride, unity, determination. The emotional certainty that their shared heritage meant something worth fighting for. The activation markers Soman had identified began triggering across all 47 species, not just humans but Velcrin, Trill, Nascent Collective, all of them. Memories they didn't know they had began surfacing. Not clear memories but feelings. Recognition that they were all related, all created by the same source, all equally valid inheritors of the galaxy. The tide turned slowly. Where the Devourers expected fear, they found defiance. Where they expected retreat, they found creative attacks. The battle raged for 3 days. Captain Dae Hyun led a strike force deep into the Devourer formation. Their goal was suicidal: destroy the central command entity that coordinated the hive mind. Ancient humanity had never managed it. The command entity was too well protected, too strong. But Dae Hyun's force didn't attack it directly. They attacked the space around it, using the quantum weapons in ways that Junho said were impossible. They created paradoxes, places where matter and energy couldn't exist normally. The command entity, relying on logic and calculation, couldn't process the impossible. In the moment of confusion, Dae Hyun's ship rammed directly into the command entity's core, his weapons firing at point-blank range. The explosion destroyed both ships and the Devourer hive mind collapsed into chaos. Without coordination, individual Devourer units became vulnerable. The galactic fleet pressed the advantage. Junho's ancient tactics combined with modern intuitive fighting created a style the Devourers simply couldn't counter. After 72 hours, the Devourers retreated. Not destroyed completely, but damaged enough that they withdrew beyond the galaxy's edge. They had never retreated before. In millions of years of conquest, this was their first defeat. The cost was terrible. 40% of the galactic fleet was gone. Millions had died. Earth itself had taken damage from Devourer strikes, but they had survived. In the aftermath, the galaxy transformed. The Galactic Assembly was reformed with a new charter. Earth wasn't given control, but it was recognized as the origin point. Humanity as the elder species. More importantly, all 47 species began to see themselves as siblings, children of the same creators. Ambassador Minho worked with representatives from every species to establish the Institute of Shared Heritage, where all could study their common origins. Vestal and Dr. Hana co-directed the institute, teaching new generations about their history. The ancient humans who had been awakened chose to remain, but not as rulers. They became teachers, guides, helping modern species understand their heritage while encouraging them to forge their own paths. Architect Nari met privately with Minister Unji, Earth's civilian leader, to share one final secret. The regression protocol did more than we told you, Nari admitted. We didn't just change humanity. We placed genetic triggers in all the species we created. Dr. Soman stood before the consciousness storage chamber, her hand shaking slightly as she prepared to activate it. Inside this system, 5 million ancient human minds waited in digital suspension. Keeper 7 had recommended starting with just 5. Too many at once could be overwhelming, both for them and for the modern humans trying to understand them. "Are you ready?" Hana asked softly. Soman nodded and initiated the sequence. The chamber hummed to life, and slowly, 5 holographic figures materialized before them. They looked human, wearing clothing that was elegant but unfamiliar. Their eyes opened, and for a moment they seemed confused. Then understanding dawned. The first to speak was a woman who appeared to be in her 40s. "How long?" she asked simply. 3 million years, Soman answered. The woman closed her eyes briefly, processing this. Then the regression protocol worked. "We survived. I'm Nari. I was one of the architects who designed the protocol." The other 4 introduced themselves. There was Junho, a military strategist, Mirai, a quantum physicist, Taewon, a geneticist, and Ara, a psychologist who had studied the Devourer's behavior. They were the best of ancient humanity, carefully chosen to be awakened first if the need ever arose. "We need your help," Daehyun said. "The Devourers are returning. We have less than 18 months. Junho's expression darkened. "That's not much time. Show us what you have. Ships, weapons, military readiness." Over the next hours, the ancient humans reviewed the current state of the galaxy. They saw the modern galactic assembly, the diverse species that now filled the stars, and humanity's current technological level. Their reactions were mixed. "The species development exceeded our projections," Taewon said with satisfaction. 47 distinct civilizations, each with unique approaches to problem solving. "This diversity is good, but their military capabilities are terrible," Junho added bluntly. "By our standards, they're fighting with toys. The Devourers will tear through them in days." Mirai was studying the technological specifications. "Wait, look at this." She pulled up data on modern human achievements. "They've developed things we never had. Quantum consciousness integration, adaptive shield algorithms, intuitive navigation systems. These aren't based on pure mathematics. They're based on instinct and creativity." Nari smiled. "The regression protocol worked better than we hoped. Modern humanity isn't trying to recreate what we were. They're creating something new." Ara, who had been quiet, spoke up. "The real question is psychological readiness. The Devourers don't just attack physically. They attack the mind. They project despair, inevitability, the certainty of defeat. Ancient humanity nearly broke under that pressure. How will modern species handle it?" "We have to try," Hana said firmly. "We don't have another choice." Back on Earth, preparations were accelerating. Admiral Sujin had taken control of the military response, coordinating with the Galactic Assembly members who were willing to work together. It wasn't enough. Even with half the galaxy on their side, the numbers were grim. Researcher Kyung had made another breakthrough. She discovered that certain humans like Soman weren't just genetically marked. They were trained, not consciously, but through cultural practices passed down for thousands of years. Korean meditation techniques, Indian yoga, Tibetan mental disciplines. All of these were actually ancient training methods disguised as religion and philosophy, waiting to be understood in context. "The ancients left us training manuals," she explained to Minister Yoonji, Earth's civilian leader. "They knew we would need these skills. They just hid them in plain sight, in practices that would survive millennia." Yoonji, a practical woman in her 60s, understood the implications. "Can we teach these methods to others?" "To the military?" "We're already starting. People with high activation markers are learning fast. Some of them are developing abilities we don't fully understand yet. Enhanced spatial awareness, the ability to predict movement patterns intuitively, resistance to psychological attacks." While this was happening, Ambassador Minho was fighting a different battle. Kael'tar's faction had grown stronger. They convinced 3 major species to form a separate military coalition, one dedicated to containing or destroying humanity before the ancient threat could fully awaken. "They're going to attack Earth," Minho's aide warned. "We have intelligence showing fleet movements, maybe 2 months before they're in position." Minho felt tired. "We're preparing to fight the Devourers, and we have to watch our backs against species we created." Does Kael'tar not understand that the Devourers will destroy everyone? He thinks it's a human trick, a way to take over the galaxy using fear. At the Prime Repository, the team had awakened more ancient humans and begun the massive task of transferring technology and knowledge. But it wasn't as simple as downloading information. Modern humans had to understand the concepts, and ancient humanity's science was built on principles that seemed almost magical. Taiyang worked with Mirai, trying to understand ancient faster-than-light theory. You're saying space isn't really space and time isn't really time? Correct. They're perspectives, not absolutes. Once you understand that, truly understand it, you can manipulate them. But it requires thinking in ways that evolution typically doesn't favor. Your brain actively resists understanding this. Then how did ancient humanity figure it out? We had thousands of years of technological civilization. We built AI to help us think in ways we couldn't naturally. You have, Mirai checked, less than 200 years of spaceflight. You're extraordinarily far behind where we were at this stage. But we have something you didn't, Taiyang countered. We evolved naturally for 3 million years. Our brains work differently now. Mirai ran some tests and was surprised. You're right. Your intuitive processing is far stronger than ours was. You can grasp concepts emotionally that we could only understand mathematically. That's fascinating. Across the galaxy, the Exodus fleet was approaching. Captain Hyun sent detailed messages ahead, sharing everything his people had learned about fighting the Devourers. The news wasn't encouraging. We've fought them for 3 million years, Hyun's message said. Small skirmishes, border conflicts, running battles. We survived by staying mobile, never settling in one place long enough for them to find us. But we never defeated them. We couldn't. They're too strong, too numerous, too relentless. Then how do we win? Daehyun asked when the message finished playing. Nari, who had been studying the Devourer data, had an idea. Ancient humanity tried to overpower them. We built bigger weapons, stronger shields, faster ships. We matched force with force. And we lost. What's the alternative? We don't match their force. We do something they can't predict. Something that makes no logical sense but works anyway. She pulled up battle simulations. Look at their attack patterns. They're perfectly efficient. Zero waste. Pure logic. They can predict any rational response. So we respond irrationally? Hunho sounded skeptical. Not irrationally. Intuitively, creatively. We do things that work emotionally rather than logically. Sacrifice plays that don't make mathematical sense but create psychological advantages. Tactics that rely on hope and determination rather than pure calculation. The Devourers have never faced that, Ara added. They've conquered hundreds of civilizations, but all of them were technological like ancient humanity. They've never fought species that blend technology with emotion, logic with intuition. Soman had been working on something else. She pulled up genetic data from all the galactic species. Look at this. Ancient humanity didn't just create diverse species. They encoded similar activation markers in all of them. Not as strong as in humans, but they're there. Meaning? Hana asked. Meaning that given time and the right trigger, all the species in the galaxy could begin remembering their origins. Not intellectually, but instinctively. They could access abilities their creators intended them to have. The Devourer's approach activates fear and despair. Era said thoughtfully. But what if we could activate something else? Pride in our shared heritage, unity in our common origin, determination to protect what our ancestors built. It was a massive gamble. They had months, not years. They had to unite fractured species, teach ancient techniques, distribute technology that modern science barely understood, and prepare for an enemy that had destroyed civilizations far more advanced than anything the current galaxy possessed. But they had one advantage the Devourers had never faced before. They had diversity of thought. They had emotional resilience. They had 3 million years of natural evolution combining with ancient technology, and they had no other choice. As the Exodus fleet entered the galaxy, bringing 300,000 ships and warriors who had fought the Devourers for ages, plans came together. Admiral Sujin would command the defensive forces. Junho would coordinate strategy with ancient military doctrine. Soman would lead the genetic activation program, helping all species unlock their latent abilities. But there was still the problem of Kael'tar. His forces were approaching Earth, and a civil war in the middle of preparing for the Devourers would doom everyone. Vestal, who had become one of humanity's strongest advocates, volunteered to negotiate. I'm Velkrin. Keltar might listen to me. He wants to destroy us, Minho pointed out. The news spread across Earth like wildfire. Humanity's true history was suddenly revealed and people didn't know how to feel. Some celebrated, proud that their species had such an incredible past. Others felt afraid, wondering what it meant that something terrible enough to make ancient humanity hide was coming back. In Seoul, researcher Kyung sat in her office surrounded by old books and ancient texts. She was a historian who specialized in Earth's oldest civilizations and their myths. For years, people had called her work pointless. Who cared about old stories when humanity was exploring the galaxy? Now those old stories mattered very much. She pulled out texts from Korea, India, Mesopotamia, and Egypt. She started seeing patterns she had never noticed before. The Korean creation myth spoke of a time when gods came from the sky and taught humans everything. The Sumerian tablets talked about the Anunnaki, beings who came from the stars. Egyptian texts described a first time when gods walked among men. They weren't myths, she whispered to herself. They were memories, fragments of the truth passed down for thousands of generations. She found star maps hidden in ancient carvings. The positions of certain temples and monuments matched coordinates in space. Someone had been leaving clues, hoping that future humanity would eventually understand. On the military space station orbiting Earth, Admiral Sujin reviewed threat assessments with growing concern. She was 55 years old, a career officer who had spent her life defending Earth from pirates and occasional territorial disputes. Nothing had prepared her for this. We have confirmed military buildups in 7 sectors, her aide reported. The Velkrin are moving 3 battle fleets toward Sol system. The Trill have blockaded 2 nearby colonies, and the nascent collective has issued an official statement calling humanity a threat to galactic security. They're afraid, Sujin said. They can't accept the truth, so they're preparing for war. Can you blame them? We're telling them their entire history is a lie, that they're engineered creations. Some of them are handling it better than others. Sujin pulled up the latest intelligence reports. Not all species were hostile. About half seemed willing to accept the truth and work together. But the other half, led by a Velkrin military commander named Kael'tar, saw humanity as a threat that needed to be eliminated. Kael'tar's reasoning was simple and terrifying. If humanity could create all these species once, they could do it again. And if the ancient protocols were reactivating, who knew what weapons and capabilities humans might suddenly remember? Better to destroy Earth now, while humanity was still relatively weak, than face an ancient empire reborn. Ambassador Minho stood before the Galactic Assembly once more. But this time the mood was very different. Half the chamber wanted to hear what he had to say. The other half wanted him arrested or killed. We didn't ask for this, Minho said, his voice carrying through the chamber. We didn't know about our past. We're just as surprised as you are. But the evidence is real. The Devourers are coming. We can fight about our history or we can work together to survive. How convenient, Kael'tar sneered from his section. Humans discover they're supposedly our creators, just when a threat appears. How do we know this entire thing isn't a plan to take over the galaxy? Because we're sharing everything, Minho replied. Every archive, every piece of technology, every bit of data. We're not keeping secrets. Keeper 7 is transmitting information to anyone who wants to receive it. That was true, but it didn't ease all fears. The assembly broke into arguing factions, some supporting humanity, others demanding action against Earth. The vote for military intervention failed, but barely. Minho knew it was only a matter of time before shooting started. On the horizon's edge, Daehyun's crew was dealing with their own challenges. Keeper 7 had revealed that the Prime Repository, the central archive containing all of ancient humanity's knowledge, was hidden somewhere that only modern humans could find. The location wasn't in any database. Instead, it was encoded in human DNA itself. Dr. Soman had arrived from Earth to help. She was a geneticist who specialized in human evolution. When she ran her own genetic scan through Keeper 7's systems, the results were remarkable. I'm showing unusually high concentrations of what Keeper 7 calls activation markers, she explained to Hana and Daehyun. Apparently, the regression protocol didn't affect all humans equally. Some bloodlines retained more of the ancient genetic modifications. What does that mean practically? Daehyun asked. It means I might be able to find the Prime Repository. The location is literally written in my DNA. I just need to figure out how to read it. Working with Keeper 7 and Taiyang, Somin began a process that felt more like meditation than science. She would read ancient texts that Kyung had sent from Earth, and something in her mind would react. Visions would come to her, not memories exactly, but feelings. Intuitions about where to go. It's like my ancestors are trying to tell me something, she said. Every time I focus on the old Korean text, I see stars. Specific stars. I think I'm seeing coordinates. It took 2 weeks of careful work, but eventually Somin had something. A location. A brown dwarf system 700 light-years from Earth, hidden in a thick nebula that made scanning difficult. It was the perfect place to hide something. Meanwhile, a message reached Earth from deep space. It came through channels that shouldn't exist, using quantum entanglement technology that modern science barely understood. The message was simple. We are returning. The Exodus fleet remembers. 15 months until arrival. Nobody knew who sent it until Keeper 7 identified the signature. The Exodus fleet, the AI explained. When ancient humanity enacted the regression protocol, not everyone agreed. Some chose to leave the galaxy entirely rather than forget who they were. They've been traveling through intergalactic space for 3 million years. They survived? Hana asked in wonder. It appears so. Their message includes warnings about the Devourers. They have fought them before. They know what's coming. The message also included something else, a name. Captain Hyon, commander of the Exodus fleet, who claimed to be a direct descendant of those who fled. His people had maintained their technology and knowledge across the ages, but at a cost. They were fewer in number, more rigid in thinking, less adaptable than modern humanity. With coordinates in hand, the Horizon's Edge set course for the hidden system. They weren't alone. Vestal insisted on coming, wanting to understand the species that created his ancestors. Commander Yuna came too, officially on assignment from the Assembly, but really because she wanted to know the truth. The journey took 3 days at maximum faster than light speed. When they dropped back into normal space at the edge of the nebula, their scanners almost missed it. The brown dwarf was dim, barely putting out any light, but orbiting it was a structure so massive that it defied comprehension. That's not possible, Jiwon whispered. It was a Dyson sphere, a shell completely surrounding the brown dwarf, capturing all its energy. The structure was thousands of kilometers in diameter, with a surface area larger than 1 billion Earths. This was the prime repository, and it was beyond anything the modern galaxy had ever built. As they approached, automated systems activated. Defense platforms that had been dormant for millions of years came online, targeting their ship. Then the platform scanned them, detected human genetic markers among the crew, and powered down. "Welcome to Prime," Keeper 7 said. "The heart of ancient humanity's civilization. Everything is here. The complete technology database, the full historical archives, weapons that could destroy stars, ships that could cross galaxies in days, and something more important than all of that." "What?" Daehyun asked. "The consciousnesses of 5 million ancient humans stored and waiting. They've been asleep for 3 million years. With the proper authorization, they can be awakened." The crew landed on the Dyson sphere's inner surface. The scale was overwhelming. Cities that could house billions stretched to the horizon, factories that could build anything, gardens that covered entire continents, all of it empty, waiting, preserved perfectly by automated systems. In the central chamber, they found the main control system. Salmon's genetic markers granted her access. As she interfaced with the system, her eyes went wide. "I'm seeing everything," she said. "The entire history. The Devourers came from another universe, breaking through into ours. Ancient humanity fought them for 10,000 years. We barely escaped. What else?" Hana pressed. "The regression protocol. It wasn't just about hiding. It was about evolution. Ancient humanity had reached a technological peak, but they had stopped growing in other ways. They made themselves primitive again so they could evolve naturally, develop new capabilities that ancient humanity never had." "What capabilities?" Vestal asked. Somin pulled up data showing human development over the past 3 million years. Adaptability, creativity, emotional resilience. Ancient humanity was powerful but rigid. Modern humanity is weaker technologically but stronger in every other way. The Devourers win through overwhelming force. They've never faced opponents who can adapt during battle, who can think of solutions that don't follow logic. A hologram appeared, showing what the devourers looked like. They were massive biomechanical entities, each one the size of a moon. The emergency message from the horizon's edge reached the Galactic Assembly within hours. Ambassador Minho read the report 3 times, not believing what he was seeing. Ancient human structures. Archives millions of years old. Technology beyond anything the galaxy currently possessed. It seemed like a dream or a mistake. But Daehyun didn't make mistakes. The assembly convened immediately. This time the council chamber was packed. Representatives from every species crowded in, all wanting to hear about the discovery. Minho stood at the central podium for the first time ever, feeling dozens of alien eyes watching him. "The structure is real," he said firmly. "My people have sent complete scans and translations. We request permission to continue the investigation." The Velcrin delegate stepped forward, his forearms crossed. "This is clearly a fabrication. Humans are desperate for respect, so they invent fairy tales about ancient glory. We demand an independent inspection team." Minho wanted to argue, but he knew it was useless. "Agreed, send your team." Commander Yuna was put in charge of the inspection. She was from a species called the Trill, short and covered in silver scales with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She arrived at the structure with a team of scientists from 6 different species, all of them looking skeptical. Dr. Hana met them at the entrance, professional but tense. "Everything is documented. We've touched nothing except what was necessary to access the main chamber." "We'll see," Yuna said coldly. Among the inspection team was High Researcher Vesthal, a Velcrin scientist known for his rigid adherence to facts. He entered the structure with obvious disdain, clearly expecting to prove it was all a human hoax. But as he studied the walls, ran his own scans, and examined the holographic systems, his expression slowly changed. Back on Earth, a specialist was being rushed to the site. His name was Taeyang, a young man of 28 who had dedicated his life to studying dead languages. He was a cryptolinguist, someone who could decode languages that no longer existed. When he received the call about the archive, he thought it was a joke. When he saw the data, he stopped laughing. Now he stood in the ancient chamber, staring at symbols that sang to something deep in his mind. "This is incredible," he whispered. "The base structure is related to Proto-Korean, but also to Sumerian, Sanskrit, and dozens of other ancient Earth languages. It's like they all came from this root language." Keeper 7's hologram appeared again, responding to Taeyang's presence. The AI system had been dormant for millions of years, but it recognized human genetic markers. It was programmed to share information only with humans, though the other species could hear. The first migration occurred 2.8 million years ago, Keeper 7 explained. Humanity had reached the peak of technological achievement. We had mastered consciousness transfer, genetic engineering, and faster-than-light travel. This galaxy was empty of intelligent life, so we filled it. Vestal stepped forward, his voice shaking. "You're saying humans created the other species?" "Not created. Guided. Accelerated. The Velcrin were evolved from primate species we found on a world 300 light-years from here. We modified their genetics to increase intelligence and physical capability. The same was done for 46 other species across the galaxy. You are all children of Earth, whether you accept it or not." The chamber fell silent. Taeyang continued working with the AI, unlocking more files. Each new revelation was more shocking than the last. The ancient humans hadn't just explored the galaxy. They had shaped it, designed it, built it into a thriving ecosystem of intelligent species. "But why?" Hana asked. "Why create all these species and then disappear?" Keeper 7's hologram flickered, as if accessing deep memories. "Because something was coming. A threat from beyond this galaxy. We called them the Devourers. They consumed our home galaxy, destroying everything in their path. We fled here to the Milky Way, and we tried to prepare." "Prepare how?" Commander Yuna asked, her skepticism fading. "We created you. All of you. Different species with different strengths, different ways of thinking. We hoped that diversity would be the key to survival. Then we made the hardest choice. We used the regression protocol. Taeyang found the files on the regression protocol and projected them for everyone to see. The data was dense, but the basic idea was clear. Ancient humanity had deliberately destroyed their own civilization. They erased their technology, modified their own genetics to remove advanced capabilities, and scattered themselves. Most went to one planet, Earth. We made ourselves primitive, Keeper 7 said. We became simple, tribal, almost animal. We forgot everything. This was done to hide. The Devourers hunt advanced civilizations by their technological signatures. By becoming primitive, we became invisible. Vesthal collapsed into a sitting position, his legs unable to hold him. His entire worldview was crumbling. The Velkrin were one of the oldest species in the galaxy, proud of their 100,000-year history. Now he learned they were only 300,000 years old, created in a laboratory by the very species he had called primitive. Commander Yuna was more practical. If you hid successfully, why activate now? Why reveal all this? Because the regression protocol included a fail-safe, Keeper 7 answered. When humanity reached space travel again naturally, certain genetic triggers would begin activating. Slowly, over generations, humans would start to remember. The archive systems would become accessible. This is happening now because it's time. Time for what? Daehyun asked. The hologram's expression became grim. Time to prepare. The Devourers move slowly, but they never stop. Our projections indicated they would reach this galaxy approximately 3 million years after we fled. That time is approaching. Before anyone could process this information, alarms began sounding throughout the structure. Ji-won checked her portable scanner and went pale. Captain, we have ships approaching. Multiple contacts. Military vessels from the Velkrin, Trill, and Nascent Collective. They're going to destroy the archive, Yuna said quietly. I know my government. They can't allow this information to exist. Taeyang worked frantically with Keeper 7. Can we copy the data? Back it up somehow? Unnecessary, the AI replied. This is Archive 7 of 127. All archives are linked through quantum entanglement. When you activated this one, you activated all of them. On screens around the chamber, views from other archives appeared. From 126 locations across the galaxy, ancient human installations were powering up after millions of years of silence. Each one was broadcasting the same message, the same truth, the same impossible history. The galaxy was watching. Every species with a radio telescope or quantum communicator was receiving the data. There was no hiding it now, no denying it. Earth, dismissed and mocked, was revealed as the origin point of galactic civilization. Vesthal stood slowly, his composure returning. He looked at Hana with new eyes. We need to get this data to scientists who will believe. Not everyone will want to accept this truth. You believe it? Hana asked, surprised. The evidence is overwhelming, and I am a scientist first before I am Velkrin. Truth matters more than pride. He paused. Though I must admit, learning that my ancestors were created in a laboratory by human scientists is difficult. The military ships were getting closer. Daehyun made a decision. Keeper 7, can you transfer yourself to our ship's computer? Yes, but be warned. Finding the prime repository will be dangerous. Only humans can access it, and many will try to stop you. What's the prime repository? Commander Yuna asked. The Central Archive. The one that contains everything. The full history. The complete technology database and the truth about what ancient humanity was really fleeing from. The data transfer took only minutes. As Keeper 7's consciousness uploaded to the horizon's edge, the ancient structure began to shut down, its purpose fulfilled. The team rushed back to the ship as the military vessels entered orbit. They jumped to faster-than-light speed just as the first weapons fired. Behind them, the archive was destroyed, reduced to dust and debris. But the information was safe, copied across 127 locations and now spreading across every computer network in the galaxy. As the horizon's edge raced toward the nearest safe harbor, Ji-won studied the data Keeper 7 had given them. Her hands trembled as she read the sensor logs the AI had included. Captain, she said quietly, Keeper 7 didn't just activate the archives.
He activated the early warning system.
The one that ancient humanity built to watch for the Devourers. And? Taehyun asked, though he already knew the answer wouldn't be good. And the system is showing alerts, multiple contacts at the galaxy's edge. Unknown ships moving at speeds that shouldn't be possible. They'll reach inhabited space in 18 months. The Devourers had returned, and humanity had 18 months to remember 3 million years of lost knowledge, or watch everything they had created burn. The council chamber was cold, and Ambassador Minho felt every bit of it. He sat in the human section, a small chair in the corner where the lighting barely reached. Around him, Representatives from 47 different species argued about trade routes and technology exchanges. Nobody looked at him. They never did. A tall creature with blue skin and 4 arms stood at the center podium. This was the Velcrin delegate, and his voice boomed across the chamber. The human request for quantum drive specifications is denied. Again, they are too young, too primitive. They barely left their own planet 200 years ago. Minho clenched his fists but said nothing. What could he say? It was true. Humanity had only joined the Galactic Assembly 150 years ago. Every other species here had been traveling the stars for thousands of years. Some for hundreds of thousands of years. Earth was the baby of the galaxy, and everyone treated humans like children. The meeting ended badly, as they always did. Minho walked back to his quarters alone, his footsteps echoing in the empty corridor. He wondered, not for the first time, if humanity would ever be taken seriously. Far away from the politics, Captain Dae-hyun stood on the bridge of his ship, the horizon's edge. He was a military man, 42 years old, with gray in his hair and tired eyes. His crew was small but good. They had been assigned a new mission, and he was reading the details on his tablet. "Survey the dead zone," he read aloud. "Map empty star systems. Collect dust samples." Ji-won, his navigation officer, looked up from her station. She was young, barely 30, with bright eyes that still held excitement for space travel. "It's busy work, Captain. They're keeping us away from anything important." Dae-hyun nodded. "I know, but it's our job." Dr. Hana entered the bridge carrying several data pads. She was the ship's chief scientist, specializing in ancient civilizations and archaeology. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and she wore the expression she always had when she was thinking hard about something. "The dead zone isn't completely dead," she said. "There are old references in the assembly archives. Unexplored moons, unscanned planets. Maybe we'll find something interesting." Dae-hyun smiled slightly. Hana always found reasons to be hopeful. It was one of the things he liked about her. The horizon's edge jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving the populated sectors behind. The dead zone earned its name. System after system showed nothing but empty space, cold rocks, and dying stars. The crew went through the motions, scanning and recording data that probably nobody would ever read. On the 5th day, Ji-won frowned at her instruments. "Captain, I'm picking up something odd." Dae-hyun moved to her station. "What is it?" "There's a moon orbiting that gas giant. 3rd planet in the system. The moon is giving off a faint energy reading. Very faint, but it's there." Hana practically ran to look at the data. Her eyes widened. "That's not natural. That's a power signature." They brought the ship closer. The moon was gray and lifeless, covered in craters and dust. But as their scanners swept the surface, they found it. A structure partially buried under millions of years of asteroid impacts and dust. It was huge, maybe a kilometer across, made of material their scanners couldn't identify. "We need to go down there," Hana said immediately. Dae-hyun hesitated. Regulations said they should report any findings to the assembly first. But regulations also said the assembly would take over the discovery, take all the credit, and humans would be pushed aside again. He made a decision. "Prep the landing shuttle," he ordered. The structure was even more impressive up close. The walls were smooth, covered in symbols and patterns that seemed to shift in the light. The entrance was sealed, but their equipment detected a hollow space inside. After 2 hours of careful work, they managed to open a doorway. Inside, emergency lighting flickered to life, responding to their presence. The corridors were wide and tall, built for human-sized beings. That was unusual. Most ancient galactic structures were built for species much larger or smaller than humans. Hana ran her scanner over the walls, recording everything. The symbols were dense, covering every surface. Her translation software worked slowly, parsing the ancient language. Then it beeped with a successful match. "I've got something," she whispered. The software found linguistic patterns. It's matching them against the database. They moved deeper into the structure, following the main corridor to a large central chamber. In the middle stood a pedestal with a crystalline display. More symbols covered the walls here, larger and clearer than before. Hana's scanner beeped again. This time, the translation came through clearly. She read it aloud, her voice shaking slightly. "Repository of the First Migration. Archive 7 of 127. Established Earth year 2,847,293 before Common Era." Silence filled the chamber. Ji-won spoke first. Earth year? That can't be right, Daehyun felt cold. Run it again. Check for errors. Hana's fingers moved quickly over her scanner. No errors. The linguistic base structure is. It's related to human languages. Very ancient, but the roots are there. And these coordinates, she pointed to a set of symbols near the bottom of the inscription. They point to the Sol system. To Earth, that's impossible, Daehyun said. This structure is millions of years old. Humans were still primitive apes back then. We didn't have space travel. We didn't have written language. The evidence is right here, Hana said quietly. She moved to the pedestal and carefully touched the crystal display. It hummed to life, projecting data into the air. Star maps, technical specifications, and more symbols appeared floating around them. At the bottom of the main display, another line of text appeared. Hana's scanner translated it immediately. This archive was created by humans, by our ancestors, almost 3 million years ago. Before anyone could respond, the chamber trembled. Red lights began flashing along the walls. A defensive system, dormant for millions of years, was waking up. A holographic figure materialized above the pedestal. It was human in shape, wearing strange clothing that seemed both ancient and advanced. The figure's face was calm, its eyes kind. When it spoke, the words were in a language that sounded like ancient Korean, but Hana's translator rendered it clearly. "Welcome, inheritors," the hologram said. "You have returned at last. The truth has waited long enough. I am Keeper Subunit 7, guardian of this archive. You have many questions. The answers will change everything you believe about yourselves, about this galaxy, and about what is coming." The hologram gestured, and the walls came alive with images. Ships traveling through space, planets being transformed, species being created in laboratories, and everywhere humans. Not primitive humans, but advanced beings with technology that made the current galactic assembly look like children, playing with toys. "This is your heritage," Keeper 7 said. "This is who you were, who you are, and who you must become again. The cycle is turning. The threat that forced us to hide is returning, and you are the only ones who can stop it." Daehyun, Hana, and Jiwon stood frozen, staring at impossible truths written in light and data. Everything they knew about human history, about Earth's place in the galaxy, was wrong. They weren't the youngest species. They were the oldest. They weren't the students. They were the teachers who had forgotten their own lessons, and something terrible was coming.